There we go. Good evening, Facebook fans. I am so glad you can join us tonight. This is a super exclusive and super special panel. I have people who are near and dear to me today. And unfortunately, they're considered an endangered species with all that's going on right now. So I'm going to let these gentlemen introduce themselves. First and foremost, I am your host, Lakeisha Mosley. I am your chaos coordinator of the LM Experience, which is an event management firm. I have a blog named after myself, as well as I have a podcast called Combo with Keisha. Let me start with Dennis. Introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Well, my name is Dennis Wilkerson from a small town in Georgia, Jessup, Georgia. I am a business development manager for a staffing firm here in Houston. Been in sales for about 20 years, about 5 years actually doing recruiting. So my job has always been to help people in terms of developing business, but also helping people find work. So I'm one of the people here in Houston that's really good at helping people find jobs if needed.
Good. Go ahead, Keelan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keelan Forrest, originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, but I live in Washington, D.C. now, so kind of ground zero or one of the ground zeros of all of the things that are going on. I am by day an association manager. We provide legal training and education to corporate lawyers. And by night, I am a vigilante roaming the streets of D.C. I'm kidding. I'm just a nerd that watches YouTube relentlessly until he gets
it. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Derek. I'm Derek Spears. I'm an artist, as author, entrepreneur, and proud owner of the first bookstore of its kind called Derek Books, which is a bookstore where everything in the store is written by me, and everything from the books to even the little sympathy cards and the DVDs and music, everything is by me. I wanted to step out and create a nice creative hub. So yeah, so that's some of the things that I dabble in. I'm great. I'm very, very honored to be in this group with y'all right now.
Love it, love it, love it. And Roberto?
Hi, I'm Roberto Stewart, 20-year Air Force vet, retired now. Unlike the rest of these gentlemen, I don't have a real job. I go to school. Double major in criminal justice and political science. That's me.
That's
a job too.
Right. You serve in a minute. Don't you start. Do not.
Okay, come on.
Well, I am so honored to have all four of you on this panel. When I thought about this, I was like, these are the four I gotta have here, because number one, they're gonna bring the real. So if y'all not ready, y'all might want to turn off this panel broadcast, because they're gonna bring the real. So I'm gonna start with my first question. And Derek, I'm gonna pose this to you. Does racism exist?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Racism exists. Anytime any race feels more superior than another is racism, so it's going to exist. It's existed before I got here on this earth, and I feel like it exists now, and I think it's going to still exist within the hearts of some people who feel like they're better than other people. So yeah, definitely it does exist.
Right. Keelan, what do you think?
So I'm inclined to agree. Racism certainly exists. I think I guess the next question is what does it look like, right? If it exists, and it takes on so many forms. There's being from the South, there's the overt racism that I'm used to. I can say nigga here, right? All right. I was called a nigga the first time when I was 12 years old. And so, I'm very used to that. But then you come up here to DC, and there are, very progressive whites that you work with every day who, have black friends and, watched Moesha and all this other stuff, but they have implicit bias and just think that the way that they do life is better than the way that your culture does life, and that equality looks like you assimilating into their culture as opposed to your culture thriving and the way that you do things thriving and that kind of thing, and everything in between that, right? So yes, it exists, and it is a multi-headed hydra.
Oh yeah, Dennis, what's your thoughts?
Absolutely. I was, before we came on board, I was reviewing something they had back in 1993. They had a congressional Black Caucus. Sheila E. Jackson Lee was sitting next to Jesse Jackson, and Jesse Jackson did a speech, and he was basically saying that we're winning. And in his description of winning, he was basically saying that 30 years ago, there were no Black mayors. 30 years ago, we couldn't vote. 30 years ago, when we marched, we couldn't even have a place to, go to the bathroom, to use the bathroom. And now we have congressmen and we have mayors, and we're winning, and we're on top of the world. And then they passed the mic to Louis Farrakhan. And Louis Farrakhan says, he said, ignorance is our worst enemies. And then he goes on to say that none of us are winners until we're all winning. And I think that's the key, really, when you think in terms of racism in this country. A lot of people, a lot of us who feel as if we have so-called arrived, have a different view of what racism is. And it's only recently, now that it's being videotaped, that people can no longer ignore the fact that it is occurring. And now we all are woken up and are now woke and realize that it is still here. So even though some of us are able to vote now, and we're able to hold offices, and we're able to graduate from schools, we're still experiencing racism, but now it's on different forms, from the police brutality to not being able to find employment, to the legal system that's being derived in terms of where Black men are 5 to 1 more likely to be put in jail versus the white counterparts. We see it in every avenue. It's just that now that it is videotaped, you can no longer ignore it. So absolutely, it does exist.
Right. Roberto, what's your thoughts?
It absolutely exists. For me, actually going through school recently, actually having the opportunity to sit in class, it is taking on a different moniker. It isn't just a black and white issue. It's also an ignorance, stupidity issue for me. Because understanding certain concepts that this country was built on, although I can go back and say, hey, white people did this, this, and this, and yada, yada, yada. But what's the thought process behind what liberty is, what freedom is? What's the actual thought process behind it? People not being able to articulate that. You go to school 13 years and you think you know the history of this country. And then if you actually take some classes outside of the norm that you're getting in public education, you have to actually pay for it. Then you start getting some little nuggets of, oh, wow, okay, so this technically is racially motivated. How is the same thing happening to us in a systematic way in this country, on a whole continent in Africa? Is happening all over. And most people are like, that's not a great parallel. Go take African studies and you'll see they are as crippled as we are, because, hey, you had someone come, you had a group of nations come, take over and divvy up your continent. When it was convenient for them to leave because you were not accepting of their culture at that point, they left you without educating you on what self-governance is in the world they created around you. We're going through right now. And people can be like, oh, that's not the same thing. It is the same thing. Because if you don't know what game you playing, if I'm over here playing Monopoly and you playing tic-tac-toe, and Monopoly is what everybody else playing, you're not in the game. And that's where we're at. And that's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against not being in that game in the same way. So for me, that's been a new take probably within the last year of attending school. Right.
And to your point, Dennis, of recording, we saw Rodney King get his butt toe up on video. I mean, it's been reported. What do you think makes it different now?
Well, I think now really is we're in the age of social media. You know, there was a study that I read maybe a couple of weeks ago that they were saying that in terms of cars that are being purchased now, and they're finding that people are actually purchasing more cars now online, even before COVID, versus going into the actual dealership. So we're now seeing a information shift where people are now being exposed to things. And even in the age of COVID, you know, now we're home, and in a day where we were pretty much glued to our office desk, we're now glued to our TV screen. So I think the difference is now between Rodney King is that, yes, it occurred back in the time when Rodney King, but now we have police cams. We have people now who are videotaping. Anytime a police officer stops anyone, you know, there's a new trend going out now where they say Karen, which is defined, you know, as a white person, white female who is making certain viewpoints. But those things are now being videotaped. They're being shared all over the country. So whereas before with Rodney King, it was showed, ABC, NBC, CBS, it viewed, it was done. Now people can share things at the flip of a dime on their cell phones. So we're seeing information traveling so great. People are home, we're watching it, we're seeing it. And now that the news understands that people and companies are now taking plight and they're actually paying attention to it, well, we got to realize that Wendy's, Chick-fil-A have always funded President Trump's campaign. This is not anything new. If you follow the money will show you that these companies have always funded his campaign. If you look at Tucker Carlson, who's one of maybe the most so-called racist people on Fox News, they did a report recently where they were saying T-Mobile pulled their funds from his viewership. Well, this is the deal. T-Mobile has always funded him. The thing that's happening now is that it's so polarized and it's being videotaped and it's being shared that now when he says something, you know, at a trip of a dime, somebody can hit Twitter and you got 10, 15, 20 million people now seeing it. And now here come the companies such as T-Mobile. We're going to cut ties. Here comes Chick-fil-A. Oh, we're going to now cut ties. Here's Wendy's. They gave $100,000 to the Trump campaign. We're going to give $100,000 to the Black campaign in order to help Black communities. So because now the money trail is being visible, is being shown, it's really information. You know, we're seeing Twitter, Facebook, all of them with sharing. You know, if you look even now with Donald Trump, when he did his campaign over in Tulsa, they were saying how people on TikTok were going online and they were registering for the seats for his conferences. So he was under the impression that he had millions of people about to show up. When they get there, it's a 19,000 facility. Only 6,000 people showed up. Guess what? TikTok. Those teams went online and booked it. How did they do it? They simply did a share and said, hey, let's go online to Donald Trump's campaign and let's book your seat. So again, that's just an example of information age that we're in and the power of social media to make things relevant. So if social media followers don't like you, Donald Trump, they're going to play with you. They're going to book your seats out. And it's going to look like you're having a campaign rally and you get there, there's only 6,000 people. And I think that's what's happening with the Rodney King age is that then we were under the control of the stations. The stations showed it. They could determine how long they would show it. In the age now of TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, it's always going to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Y'all jump in wherever. Yeah.
So I think also we're kind of in a perfect storm of uncomfortability. So I remember when the Arab Spring happened a few years ago, and you know, the countries, several countries in the Middle East were toppling regimes and stuff like that, and you would see people protesting in the middle of the street at like 12 noon. And I remember watching it being like, these people have jobs? Like, who got time to be in the middle of the street at 12 noon? Well, now because of coronavirus, tons of people have time to be out in the street at 12 noon to protest the things that are going on. And so, you know, one of the things, there's a comedian that I like, Michelle Wolf, who says it's very hard to start a revolution from under a duvet. I think we've been very comfortable, you know, for too long and have allowed things to to slide. You know, Trayvon Martin, we let that slide. You know, Philando Castle, we protested a bit, but we let that slide. You know, and now I think as a people, we are uncomfortable. There's so much uncertainty on the horizon. Some people are already without jobs. Some people are worried about their jobs and their livelihood and the quality of life. And they're starting to connect the dots and say, you know what, the quality of life situation, yes, on some level, it's directly attached to COVID. But in a lot of respects, it's attached to the position of Black people in America. And we are vulnerable, not just to the disease, but just vulnerable in general. And more people are motivated to change that.
That's true. So I think about at George Floyd's funeral, and they were, you know, several people were talking. And Lord, I don't know why his name is drawing a blank, but who did the eulogy? Who eulogized George Floyd? Why am I drawing a blank on his name? But he said, huh?
Al Sharpton?
Yes. I love you, Al. Anyway, Al said something that kind of made me like think really hard. He said, if COVID hadn't happened and people were not home, how would we have viewed that video of George Floyd? Would it have been a fleeting pass like y'all all just said? Or would we really have paid attention? Like COVID put us in a position to really, not for us, we already knew, but now white people see that this really happened. 8 minutes and 46 seconds, this man stayed on this man's neck and you saw his life leave him.
I think it was a culmination of all of the stuff. I feel like the COVID, people being forced to stay home. Not just Black, well, white. I want to say white, but white people got the chance to see what certain Black people go through when they can't get their unemployment, they can't get the money. They forced to use by giving orders to stay home. It's kind of like trying to check you, like you better stay home, don't come past this. We kind of been going through that for years when they try to give us certain time frames to be around. So it's kind of like the world got to kind of see what it felt like. So I think that perfect storm, like you said before, kind of brought in when they saw that, it was just like it snapped. It's gasoline to the fire. I don't think if it was a year ago and it happened, I don't think it would have been the same effect. We've seen so many. I've seen over the few years. I mean, I seen the one guy who got shot by the cop and his daughter and his baby and a wife in the back seat. And he was the same, you know, the same effect. You see a lot of that stuff happening. And it's like, I just think this time everybody kind of like it kind of took everybody because they was forced in the house. Like you said, they had time to look at the stuff and they had time to really watch it. And this day and age just forced transparency. When the camera is on, people, if you put the camera on anybody, people start to act way different. I could be sitting in I probably do too. I'll be sitting in my room chilling. Somebody come in there put you on FaceTime or something, you start acting a little bit different. You start, you know what I mean? Acting the camera came on, you know what I mean? And I think that if this didn't happen, I mean, I just think all of this forced the country and stuff to just, and we got Donald Trump just doing all kind of stuff. You got people, family members dying from something they can't, you know, we got a disease out there we can't see or find, but it's killing everybody. We just like, you know what? People it just snap. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. If it was a year before, I don't think it would have been the same.
So y'all have a question, gentlemen. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
It turned everybody into latchkey kids.
Yes.
Turned everybody into latchkey kids. You have
to
sit here and be like, I'm watching TV. No, I'm streaming this or whatever. And it turned us into that. So now when you have a president saying, oh, it's fake news, it's good people on both sides. It's 8 minutes and 46 seconds of it's good people on both sides, right? Yes. That's not cool. And now people are being able to be challenged with their thought process. You can't just go to work. You can't just go outside and be like, I don't see what's happening. You don't have you have to watch because what's on TV? don't worry, I'll wait. Because when you finish watching reality TV, you turn on the news and you got more reality TV. This time it's not fake. Because
Exactly.
MSNBC said it, CNN said it, CBS said it, all of them said the same thing, but it's still fake news. So hey, my mama say everybody can't be lying. So
Exactly.
At this point, you have to. It is what it is. Whether people accept it or not, that's a different conversation. Because you call white black and black white if you want to. Somebody's gonna call you crazy, but you have to sit. Now you have to sit and watch. And with COVID happening, when it happened, it was, as y'all said, perfect storm. Perfect storm of you don't know well, you can't do nothing. You have to watch. And for at least the last 2 months, 2.5 months, we've been watching. You've watched someone killed running for whatever reason they want to come up with, and hidden for almost at least another 2.5 months. You seeing no-knock warrants in the wrong house, 10 miles from where the no-knock warrant has already been. You watching this and you saying, why? It can't be because they got the wrong person or whatever excuse people want to come up with. At this point, you have to start challenging what system of government do you live under and that you are a part of, and who, not necessarily who you voting for, because we can go to the voting thing. My thing is this. Someone said, we build our kids, and full disclosure, it is only myself, my family, and another elderly couple in this cul-de-sac that are black. I can't find another black family in the neighborhood we live. When they see our boys, the majority of them are at least 5'11" and taller. They play basketball. No, two of these knuckleheads supposed to go to school, go to college on academic scholarships. So you take your basketball and punt it across the way. What are we doing as a people to cultivate leaders, people that you vote for, people that should be in positions that we say we're not seeing, but still we don't have a way for them to get there. Why? We're not cultivating it. If you're more worried about your child playing football for LSU or Texas or basketball for UNC, we might want to check what it is we're doing. I'm not saying that those people can't make changes. That's not what I'm saying. More often than not, the regular person is not involved or engaged in anything until COVID, and now you start saying, this isn't right. So what can I do to change this? What can I get into? What can I put my hands on to help make that change? And that's what this forces people to do.
Right. That's true. I like that. And Taquita, we're gonna get to your question, but that takes me to this other point though. Someone mentioned on a podcast or something I was listening to the other day that said that there are no people who look like us in government for us to be able to vote, or we don't put the money behind it. Oh, it was Pastor Johnson. He had a live stream and they were talking about politics and religion and what does God say in the Bible say about, racism and stuff. And so one of the ladies said, we don't get behind black candidates, or black candidates can't afford to do the campaigns. We won't get behind them and fundraise with them. We won't get behind them and put our dollars behind them to help them be out there so that we can vote for folks that look like us. So Keelan, I'll take that to you first. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on what level we're talking, right? So we do support Black folks at the municipal level, at the state government level where we can, and even in the House of Representatives. As a matter of fact, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Mama told me that Alexandria has a Black mayor right now.
Yeah.
My head almost blew off. I think there's a lot of change that's happening there. You've got Bottoms in Atlanta that makes me chuckle, but that's a whole other story for a whole other day. You've got, you've got New Orleans has a black mayor. You've got, there's a lot of black politicians in municipal politics. We've seen the needle move in the House of Representatives. What's the struggle is when you're voting for the Senate. It's a larger pool. So while, like take Louisiana, for instance, you have these progressive hubs like New Orleans and Baton Rouge has become on some level. But when you're voting for the Senate, the whole state's voting. And, it's hard to get traction around candidates. But we're seeing the needle move there, too. And not just, not in Louisiana, but, Georgia. So close, right? Florida, so close, and this guy in South Carolina who's running against Lindsey Graham, God give him feet like Hind's feet and bless that man so he can get Lady Lindsey Graham out of the Senate. I think the polls are showing that he's ahead of him, So I do think that the needle is moving, but I do think there's a lot more we can do. If I hear one more person of color say I don't vote because it doesn't matter, like I may not hit them, but I'm gonna shake them. Because it totally matters, and people talk about the Electoral College and stuff like that. And yes, on the surface, it looks like it doesn't. But if you really understand politics and the way that the Electoral College works, the votes count. The individual votes count. And we've seen with this presidency the impact that not voting has. This man has been able to appoint 2 Supreme Court justices. 2. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg is holding on with an I Love Jesus bumper sticker. Bless that woman too. Keep her healthy. Give her whatever Cicely Tyson and Betty White and Queen Elizabeth are drinking. And all the progressive things he's unraveled. And it is because, when you look at the voting record in certain states for that election, there were margins that could have been overcome by black votes in those counties.
Yeah, Dennis, what do you think about that? Do you think we just not putting money behind black folks so that they can look like us in these positions?
Well, I think we're actually part of the problem. Ella Jones was elected the first black mayor over in, I want to say, Ferguson, Missouri. I think Ferguson's population demographics in terms of blacks are like 67% black, 29% white. And in 2020, they have their first black mayor. Same scenario that happened in Georgia, where you have cities that are predominantly black, but when you look in terms of the leadership in those cities, you see majority white. One of my friends in a small town from just Georgia, they did a recent election where they were trying to get the people out to vote. They estimated about 40% of the people in the city showed up out of a population of about maybe 8-something thousand people. And one of my friends actually who was at the voting booth said that you could count the number of black men who came out to vote on her hand. And not 2 hands, but 1 hand. So I think there's an issue, there's a disconnect with us. When we look in terms of us being able to rally together in March, we show up in record numbers. When you look in terms of us showing up to the polls, we don't show up. One of the things that actually hurt Hillary Clinton is that when you heard black people saying, well, we don't trust Hillary Clinton, so we're not going to vote. But we didn't do research to understand that the Trump campaign in Russia put millions of fake ads online and Facebook and social media to paint Hillary out to be a tyrant, and we seem to have followed suit. So I think part of the problem is people say, well, you know what, we don't have the dollars in the communities, but this is the deal. Michael Jordan is a billionaire. All over this country, when you release Jordans, you see lines of black men wrapped around buildings purchasing his shoes, continuing to ensure that he will continue to be a billionaire. When it comes to us voting, we will march all day and night. We will burn communities down, including our own communities, but we do not show up to the polls to vote. One of my good friends was saying something so powerful. He said, Dennis, he said, it means nothing to stand outside 10 hours in March if you can't show up for 30 minutes to cast the ballot, because only casting the ballot is going to be able to bring change. You look in communities such as Louisiana. Much of that state is majority black. You look at Georgia, Atlanta. Majority of Atlanta is what? Black. You know, we have communities all over this country in segmented sections where you have high levels of black populations, but when you look at the leaderships in those cities, we're not represented. I think something powerful such as Houston is that Houston's had multiple black mayors, you know, and you look at the population of black people in Houston, you understand that not only do they come to vote, but they show up and they show out in voting. They have a strong network that they work together to get us out to the polls. And so I say the problem in these communities is really a lot has to do with us. You know, we can sit there all day and say, well, they're not giving us the money for our campaigns to be visible. But this is the deal. It doesn't matter how much money you have in a campaign. If you don't show up and vote, then you're not going to have representation. And that's what's happening. Like I said, 2020, Ferguson is cheering and saying, hey, we just elected our first black mayor. But for the rest of us are looking back and we're saying at 67% black population, how in the hell is 2020 the year that you finally elected a black mayor?
Right? Where y'all been?
But that's the problem that we're facing in this country. You know, we don't vote. And then also, if you look at our legal system, you know, if you look at the fact that 13% of the black men in this country are not able to vote because they're felons. 11 states have laws that are in place that are restricting them from voting. So the legal system is really set up against us that once they've committed this crime, their vote no longer counts. And if those guys are being subtracted from the people who actually are going out and voting, then we see that disparity in those communities where even if we have majority of people there, maybe 5 or 10% of them are not eligible to vote because of their background. So again, we're not voting. We've got to vote. It means nothing. Like when I looked on the news, it's amazing. All over this country, you saw young black people marching. They marched in my city. The first day they marched, there was not one black male that showed up at the march. The next day, black males showed up in record numbers. Unfortunately, when you get to the poll to vote, they didn't show up.
It's real.
That's true. Derek, what's your take?
I agree with him. I feel like
That's
I don't want to say we have attention deficit disorder, kind of, but we get real hype when it comes to the marching and protesting. But we burn out before we get to the thing that could really make the change, and that's making that vote. And I feel like that's one thing we need to check ourselves. I'm not speaking for the whole black community, but mostly it's true that we start that race off, go, and then we get to the part where we can actually win it or do something, and we turn around and those same people who started off ain't there at all. So I think we definitely need to hit the parts where we can correct and make the change, you know, because if we look at the world right now, we have the power to make stuff change. I mean, they defunding a lot of police forces. We're forcing change, so we have the power to make. If that's one thing I want people to see right now is that we have the power to make things change if we really want to make it change. But like he was saying, we got to do things that can actually make the change, which is vote, get out there and put Trump out and put some other stuff in there and force. Hey, I was reading an article, and I hope they forced them to excuse student debt. I mean, hey, I was like, hey, for some people that could be good. You know what I mean? For other people who went and played around, played school, they just but the ones who we went and we we put our hard work in, and we got to live the rest of our life with a bill. You know what I mean? That's gonna keep trying to eat at us till we get to our grave. You know, so it's certain things that we can force together as people to make things change. And I think that it's a great time. I'm looking at the question too. It's a great time for a different shift and people. So I mean, I agree with the voting thing, especially.
Yeah. Roberto, what you think? You know, you think we don't put our money behind folks, or I agree with Dennis already. I agree with Keelan, Derek, all of y'all. What do you think?
It's almost a combination of all those things. And actually, to answer my wife's question, do I think there's a global mind shift? No. We have to stop thinking that for me, Black people are immoral people. We know right, we know wrong. When we see it, we call it out.
Yep.
One of my frat brothers said, "It ain't personal, it's just business." And I know everybody, I heard that before. No, listen to what he's actually saying. It's not personal. The only way there's going to be a global mind shift is if I start digging in your pockets. Me digging in your pockets necessarily make it personal. It's just business.
What she just saying?
We have to hit in pocket.
It's business. It's just business for them. So now they can come up and say, Chick-fil-A can say, "I'm not going to fund Donald Trump. I'll give it to somebody else." Wendy's can say it. And you know what we're going to do is kind of like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to fall for the banana in the tailpipe one more time. It's not going to actually happen. It's not personal. It's not, it is business. Aaron Hunter put something out a couple of weeks ago where she was on a podcast. I cannot think of the gentleman's name. And he was telling them about the lie of the black dollar. Right? They tell you $300 billion, blah, 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 blah. Okay, 70% of the United States Black population live above the poverty line. That translate to billions of dollars. When 30% of them live below the poverty line, I'm pretty sure about 35% of them stay just above poverty line, and everybody else. How's that $300 billion worth of revenue? That's for That's for companies. Companies believe, they're like, hey, look, so if Black people ain't buying T-Mobile phones, we're gonna go broke. So we need to do something to appease them. It has to start being personal. And one of the only ways it's going to be personal is we have to start filling in some of them spaces that I don't want to go work for T-Mobile. Shut up, go work for T-Mobile. I don't want to go work for shut up, go, because we're forcing our kids to go do some certain things, but we're not forcing them to do things that's going to help make change for us. So when we have an issue with the voting, we have issues with politicians such as Connie down in Baton Rouge, and I'm shocked, but I'm supposed to be paying attention to what it is you guys are talking about. But I'm shopping. That's a vote. That is a one person, one vote. If enough of y'all vote her out of here, she gone. Like Keelan said, most people don't understand the Electoral College. Here's a real quick, fast one. Black people live in city centers now. That's where we're mad. If you can find a Black city center between Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, North and South Dakota, Kansas, Oklahoma, Minnesota, if you can find a lot of those, then you can explain to me why they are red states and not blue states. You're not gonna find that. So when you don't understand how the Electoral College works, you need a couple of these red states to not be red. Or if you want to change, you can't say I want to change directly from the Electoral College. I want it to be. I want the actual votes to be percentaged out to those people that voted for X, Y, and Z. Then you have another change. But when you don't understand that, your anger goes, let's just do away with the Electoral. Donald Trump lost. Well, he lost, but he won. But he won. And that's what you stuck with. You're worried about Donald Trump. You're worried about who doing whatever else at the House of Representatives and the Senate. Here's a real quick answer, boys and girls. The majority of your local policies and government govern what happens to you. You talking about what you getting back on taxes and
the stimulus.
First and foremost, you can tote guns till the sun come on. That's not what the fight that you think you're fighting. What kind of gun you can have is totally different than I can't have a gun.
Right.
Two different conversations. So miss me with that. Your local policies determine who get money, why they getting money, where they putting money at, all of those things. But we're sitting here talking about, well, Donald Trump ain't the reason why your school don't have money. The census.
Say that.
Go to the school board meeting.
Honest.
The other people, are you going to meetings in general? Or are you just sitting there saying, hey, you know what? I go to church on Sunday. I know I'm prayed up. God got it. If that's what you're doing, I'm pretty sure faith without work is dead. Pretty sure. So if that's the case, what kind of work you doing? Because you can't just be like, I hope, man, I hope. You can hope. Hoping is, I'm not telling you hope is bad. I'm not telling you hope is wrong. But you are going to have to go out there and stand in front of somebody's voting booth and vote. You're going to have to be one of those people that's like, I need to go research what the world they talking about because I don't know. And be able to articulate it to them. Hey, no, I know that this is what you're doing. Even if they don't know it, even if the rest of these knuckleheads don't know it, I know what you're doing. And I'm going to be here today, tomorrow, next week. Matter of fact, I'll get a couple of dollars together and I'll run against you. Even if it's $5 flies to put around my neighborhood and hope everybody vote for me. You have to be a part of the system of government other than I'm going to go vote at the voting booth because a lot of people aren't showing up and you're not showing up is the issue. Males, Black men, if you ever want, two things you should go do. One, please go register to carry a gun. Register to have a weapon. Two, make sure that you and everybody in your house of voting age show up to the poll together.
Yep.
Apparently it worked for our grandparents. For us, different conversation. So it takes me back around to, are Black men extinct or endangered species? Yeah, they're endangered species. Why? Because we have allowed the government and other little stupid things to push us away from where they want us. You're supposed to be the head of your family, be the head of your family. I don't care what you believe in, what you don't believe in. If you're supposed to be the head, be the head.
Yeah.
If you're supposed to be the example, be the example. We cannot keep sacrificing our women and children based off of our inability to go out and say, you know what? Don't worry about it. I got it. If nobody else got you, I got you. If can't nobody else gonna do it, I'll do it. We have to stop doing that because we're putting more pressure on Black women, white men to be our quote unquote savior, and then we stand back and like, oh, it's their fault. It's this person's fault. No, it's my fault first and foremost because I'm not participating in the way that I'm supposed to. I'm not being that leader. I'm not being that example. Because you can't go tell the boys, pick your behinds up, pick your clothes up, stop doing this, stop doing that, if you're not doing it yourself. You can't do that.
True. That's true.
That's how I feel about the way we're going with everything. Because we have been lost for a while. We've been lost for a while. And now it's like everybody said, it's that perfect time for us to start saying, you know what? We done put enough on everyone else. When is it going to be? When are we going to hold ourselves accountable for the things that aren't happening in the way that they aren't happening? Because apparently they're afraid of us for a reason.
And so afraid. Yeah, so afraid. On that same broadcast with Pastor Johnson and these two other pastors, I wrote this down. He said it was 75,000 votes between Florida and two other states, or 75,000 people that didn't vote.
Right.
That's a lot of people. Those are people that could have been for Hillary that chose to not show up. for whatever reason. So that's another question for you, gentlemen. What does it mean to you to see our youth of all ethnicities finally getting motivated and taking on the issue of racism? That's a big one. Who want to kick that one out?
What does it mean?
I'll take that one. And hey, Andrea, I know her. So I think it's beautiful. I think personally it helps to dispel this fear that I have had that racism would just perpetually go on because people are passing it on to their children and they're going to pass it on to their children and so on and so forth. And talking about moving needles, I think this generation coming up is starting to move the needle in the right direction. I'm not saying that they've found the magic bullet and all the problems are solved, but it is a beautiful thing to hear young people of all ethnicities, just our kids, but white kids and Filipino kids and Armenian kids, not just stand with their friends with lip service, but be actual allies, devoting their time and what little resources they have and putting their hands to the plow, to help out and help alongside them. I think that is it's telling of good change. The downside to that is, I see that here in DC, which is a progressive city, right? I'm sure people see that in Atlanta to some degree and in San Francisco. My question is it happening in Lincoln, Nebraska? Is it happening in Birmingham, Alabama? And places like that. My hope is that, on some level, excuse me, it is. One of the biggest deterrents to racism is exposure, right? I think kids are being more exposed to cultures outside their own, people outside their own, and it's hard to go back home and hear your parents say all these people are ignorant when little Timmy personally, and he's pretty smart. You know what I mean? And he can dance his ass off, and he's cool to hang out with. And that kind of exposure helps. And I think this generation is getting more of it. I just hope that it's a widespread thing and not just isolated to the place that I expose myself to.
Exactly. So let's talk white privilege. Let's go there, because I'm poking at the bear now. So I was listening to a podcast where a lady was explaining white privilege, and she said, I want to be clear that white privilege is not racist. You could have white privilege and not be racist. And I was like, okay, come on home, girl, because you're going to have to break that one down a little bit more for me. And she said, white privilege is more like playing Monopoly, and you keep passing go and collecting $200 and I don't. And you keep going and you keep going. And then when I finally get to play, you are so far in front of me, you have advanced so far to where I still can't catch up. So I'm going to start with you, Dennis. What do you think about that analogy of white privilege?
Well, I think the problem is that history has a tendency to take on the shape of the writer. And so if history is written by those who wrote it and is interpreted by those who must read it, then it's really hard sometimes for people to identify even what racism is. If you listen to some white people in their arguments is that, racism no longer exists. People make comments that you've had a black president, so therefore it is no longer there. And so I think the problem is really how we have defined it. Us in the black community, we have a tendency to jump around so many times that when we have an issue, white people are still trying to figure out, okay, why are they mad? Case in point, the kneeling, Kaepernick. A lot of people were angry and saying, why are they kneeling? And white America was saying, well, they're disrespecting the flag. at no point, I think a lot of us didn't think maybe we should explain why we're kneeling so that they would have some understanding of it. One of my white friends called me the other day. He said, Dennis, I did a study on the not Pledge of Allegiance, but the anthem. He said, and I found out that the anthem had a clause in it about slavery, the original anthem. So once he found it out, he said, now I understand why African Americans find it to be, so racist because of that clause. It was written by a slave owner who basically was telling the people that, what should happen to slaves who went and fought to help the British. They should be beaten and whooped. But it was actually removed from the anthem in order to make it more appealing for the American people. So I think the problem is that we have to really define what I'm about to say white supremacy, but what we have to do is really define, what it is, and we got to stick to the meaning of it. So the problem we have here in this country, is that when we think white privilege, we realize that the transference of wealth from one rich family to another has happened from generations. Black children inherit debt. White children inherit legacies. I have friends of mine who were financially set even before they went to college. They came home from college and they started working, in their parents' business. Case in point, I go to college. I went to college with one of my friends. One of my friends' father owned the company. During the summertime, he would go home and work for his father. When he gets ready to graduate from college, in his resume, he can put in there that he worked for a Fortune 500 company. He worked for his father. He has gained all the necessary skills to be productive in the workforce. In college, I worked for McDonald's and Wendy's. So now I go into the workforce with a resume that says McDonald's and Wendy's. He goes into a workforce working for his family for years, even backdating to high school. And on his resume, he can put 4 years of working for a business and gaining knowledge and understanding. And now he's more marketable in the workforce. That's an example of white privilege. Where in these communities, we have a disparity in terms of, of money and finances. And therefore, the white children are having a better advantage in terms of being able to go out and get jobs. If you look at the city where I'm from, there still exists these invisible lines. Newsflash for Houston, if you've ever visited Greensport, in Greensport is an invisible line. Invisible lines were created back in the times of Jim Crow, and they were really designed to keep Black people in certain areas so that we would remain there and wouldn't have access to proper schooling and health care and medical. And so therefore, when you look now in these communities, you have projects that, like where I'm from, there's a white project, there's a Black project, but guess who lives in the white projects? All of Black people. So when you have these kids who are going forth now trying to get to college, you understand where they're coming from. They're not inheriting money from their family because their family have all this money. They're inheriting debt. When I went to college, and I'll close here, when I went to college, I remember being in the dorm and somebody said, turn on the thermostat, use the thermostat to turn the temperature on. And I didn't even know what a thermostat was. We grew up in the country and we had fans in the window. Fan was a thermostat. You throw it in the window and you blow it through the house and it'll cool out. So here I am in college and looking at this thing on the wall that's a thermostat and having to have, my white roommate teach me how to use it. And I think we don't understand that is happening all over this country. So when we're saying in terms of white privilege, what we're really saying is that, white America has a stepping stone when they're stepping out in terms of college, when they're stepping out in terms of their career paths, they have an advantage. They're stepping onto something. In terms of Black kids, when we're stepping into, we're coming out of debt. Mama had debt. Daddy had debt, granddaddy had debt, great-great-granddaddy had debt, and now here I am, graduated from college, and I have nothing but student loans because my parents could not afford to send me to school. So therefore, when I want to get ready to get a house, I already came out of the gate with $80-something thousand in student loans. as compared to my white counterpart whose parents were able to offset the loans by being able to contribute. And therefore he's graduated after 4 years with maybe $5,000 or $10,000 worth of loans. And I have 80,000, and now I want to get a house. And now people want to tell me I shouldn't be upset that I couldn't get a house because my credit's jacked up. Well, newsflash, if my parents have had the same opportunities afforded to them as some of my white counterparts, that I would have that advantage as well. And I think that's the key. We got to understand that when you think in terms of a simplest way to think in terms of white privilege is think in terms of a derby race, right? If you have these thoroughbreds that are at the racing front and everyone is lined up, right, and the gate comes open, but listen, the gate only comes open to white privilege, which means they're able to start running. In terms of the blacks and the minorities, they don't run until about maybe 5, 10, 20 minutes later. So therefore, they're able to run, but because they don't start at the same time frame, they're outpaced, they're out being performed, and they don't necessarily are able to reach the same advantages as their, white counterparts. I read an article today that was basically saying that if you look at black children who come from like the 1% millionaires of the country, and you compare them to white kids who are 30 something $1,000 a year parents, you would find that that those billionaires turn out to be in poverty. The children turn out to be in poverty because of poor spending and poor choices made, which means that even when we have the money, we don't pass on the knowledge. We don't teach our children how to be successful in business. Like my father, he rented, he owned houses. He didn't really have strong of an education, but we didn't learn the family business. But I think back now, what if we had learned the family business? What if we had been able to put that on our resumes? What if we had thought to put it on our resumes? We didn't even think to do those kinds of things. And I think that's the problem. Again, when you think in terms of white privilege, you have to understand that in this country, that there's a huge amount of us who are at a strong disadvantage because basically we didn't have we're not afforded to the same rights. It may be written in the Constitution, but we forget who wrote the Constitution. Again, history has a tendency to look like the writers. And so if the writers are achieving certain things, then it's fine. But when those who are able to view it are not receiving those things, it's not fine.
Right. That's
real. 100% real. I mean, just for everything he was saying, it's true. But also, I look at adding on the white privilege is just being white. I mean, let me walk down the street at 10 o'clock at night, and a police officer for me, all hell break loose. But it don't matter if the white person is poor or rich. If they walk down there, they could probably be like, "Hey, you need to use the phone. You lost," or something like that, just because. It is true, just because the color of their skin gave them that privilege that they cool, they safe, and as mad as people want to get, it's the truth. Like a lot of times that skin color, because of the way the world was built, and like you're saying, a lot of things like that, is just gave us like a stigma, bad, black, Hispanic, whatever, gave us a different flavor than a white person. They don't realize. I actually just had a conversation in my store with a white man who was older than I was, and he said I was trying to explain to my my white privileged friends that, hey, if you're black, you automatically got those issues that we wouldn't have, whether we're poor, trailer trash, or or we're rich. He's like, we're white. That's our card. We're white. We're good. You know what I mean? And I agree with the education thing too, because I was a first generation low income student, and I everything I took was a bullet. I didn't know nothing about taking a grant before a loan. I just was trying to get through. Like he was saying, it's funny. I had white roommates teaching me stuff. I had no idea too. So you go there, and that's why I was saying earlier in the conversation that, I hope people who went like myself and Dennis who went to school, worked hard and didn't play around and graduated, we hit with that bill. Hey, we got started with the race, way later, and we shouldn't be penalized completely like that for not knowing, because I didn't know. I was like, hey, how I get through this school before the bursar office say I can't go to class next semester.
Right.
Take this loan, take this Sally Mae loan, and you be good. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't know, it was my lack of knowledge, but also for us being generation passing, they have generational wealth that they pass down from family. And I know this because I'm from Milwaukee, and I was in the 220 program, chapter 220 program, which allowed me to go to the schools in the suburbs before be a city kid. So I saw both sides of the fence, and I saw how my rich friends lived, and I went back home in my little room, and I'm like, man, you know what I mean? Like I got to work, they got to work, and to this day, they running their family businesses, they got millions of dollars and this and that. And I'm building, that was my thing, to build my own bookstore company and all of that for my kids, so I could try to pass that, pass that down. But you're right, we got a bad start, and it's like, I think that's another part of our anger with with today, the frustration. So yeah, that's how.
Keelan, jump in there. That's good, Derek. You right about that.
So I have a funny story. I have some friends who are white, and I was over at their house for a party. Before I start the story, they're cool, they're allies. Like,
yeah, I got a lot of people too.
This fits. So I'm over at their house, and I'm overhearing a conversation with these two ladies that were there, and one of them says, my parents are about to build a beach house. And the other one goes, oh, is this your first vacation property? And the other one says, no. We used to keep a place in London. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, when I say I'm going to my mama's house in the country, it is our primary residence, and it just happens to be in the country. We didn't pick it. It was just, it kind of turned out. But it speaks to that Dennis and Derek were talking about, that
Right.
there is an advantage there that we do not have, and it's because there's this great Bobby Kennedy quote that I absolutely love. Somebody had asked him about blacks and education, and the question was very snarky. It was like, why black people haven't come as far as they should have, and da 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 da. And he said, I'm rich, and I have to sit with my kids after school to make them do their homework if they have homework. He was like, imagine somebody not who hadn't prioritized education, or maybe even can't read because their parents couldn't read, and their parents couldn't read because their parents were slaves. And yes, the extreme stories are funny, right? The apartment in London is hilarious, but privilege takes a lot of different forms. It starts there, and it goes all the way down to what Derek was talking about, just not being able to walk out in certain neighborhoods at 10 o'clock at night. And to go back to the original question, I think is it possible to be afforded privilege but not be racist? Absolutely. Not everyone who has privilege is racist, but the question is, and where the racism lies, that subtle racism lies, is in what are you doing to make sure that the playing field is level for the people that have not had access to that privilege? What are you doing to protect that privilege? Are you doing it at the expense of people who don't have the privilege that you have? And if the answer to any of those questions is not the right answer, then whether or not you love black folk and have black friends and hang out with black people or any of the other things, there is racism on the inside of you, and it has to be rectified.
That's true. Keisha, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a story they had back in 2018 August. Jeffrey Epstein, he was a white doctor that was arrested at the airport, and they arrested him, and he yelled out loud, he said, "You're treating me like I'm effing black." And after he yelled that out, they came back later to do a story on him. He was actually a conservative, he's a Republican, and he says, I understand how black people feel who are being arrested. But it was interesting to hear him a doctor being wrestled to the ground, and the first thing he says is, "You're treating me like I am effing black."
Mm-hmm.
That is the definition
Oh,
of white privilege at its best.
Yeah.
right. Roberto, what's your take on that? I remember that night. Yes, he was wrong for that. I was mad.
There's a CJCC here for the criminal justice reform for Charleston County here. The first meeting we go to, we sit at this round table. There's this gentleman and this young lady. This guy had been in and out of jail, white guy, um, owns his own little company, and he was like, "While I'm in jail, I understood what white privilege was." He was like, he's about 6'1", he can play, and he's like, "I'm in jail and I want to play ball," but the black guys are like, "I'm not picking him. You can't. You white. You can't play." He said, "I had never had someone tell me because I'm white, I can't do something." And that's when I understood what white privilege was. And I was like, that is the atypical, that is that hit it. That hit the nail on the head right there. I don't care who you tell that story to, that is white privilege. Because you are black. It isn't that I think ill of you. It may be because I think ill of you, but because you're black and I have been saturated with this is my take on black people from all my other influences, you can't do that. When people tell me that white privilege exists, here's a better answer. Why are we, 2020, why are we still talking about the same thing that you were talking about when my mom was my age? Why are we still talking about the same thing when my grandmother and grandfather were my age? Still talking about the same thing when my great grandparents were our age. If that's not an example of white privilege, I don't know what is. Because you can't say it doesn't exist and then live in this country, or actually live in a lot of countries. White privilege is why there's such thing as capitalism. But a lot of people don't say, no, I'm pretty sure the guy that came up with it, he's English. He's a white guy. May have been 18th century. Don't make him no less whiter. That's why you have it. And because I don't look like what you think that is, you get a head start. I don't.
Right.
You know. Right. So when people say it don't exist, look at your history. Apparently it does. White privilege don't exist for the Native Americans between North America and South America. White privilege don't exist for a whole, well, that's two continents. It don't exist for Africa. It don't exist in Asia. White privilege don't exist in Australia. So when people say it don't exist, look at how this system works. This system has been perpetuated and forced upon people based on solely, it's not solely for some people, not solely a skin thing, but I'm better than you. When you tell me, hey, there are studies that white people in different countries had to make it to where black people were dumb because of a protruding bone out of the back of their head. What does that have to do with? What does that have to do with anything? They were trying to scientifically prove they were superior. Then when they couldn't prove it scientifically, they was like, you know what? I'll just play you out of the game. Jim Crow is a perfect example of I'll play you out of the game. Apartheid is a perfect example of I'll play you out of the game. So yeah, it exists. And all you have to do is just be in a position for it to work for you. If I see one of y'all on the street and y'all tell me you need something and I have the means to give it to you, why would I give it to someone that does not look like me, has not experienced me, has no idea why would I give it to somebody else that has no idea what they did? Why would I give it to them? I can give it to you and be like, go forth and prosper. Whereas everyone else, hey, you kiss my behind and kick rocks. So yeah, that's the long and the short of it. That is the long and the short. People want that nice, safe answer. And what I think is in the last 4 years, you've gotten the answer that you were looking for from the head of the United States, from the face of the United States at this point. If you don't like what a person says, or how they say it, you don't have any further look than your president. He says stuff
That's it.
every day, all day, and you sit and watch, and you're like, well, you know what? At least I know what he's thinking. At least you know what he's thinking, because it's a lot more dangerous to walk around here and see people that you don't know what they thinking.
Exactly.
At least I know.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. So let me pose this question to y'all, because someone said, when this first happened, we began to be teachers, y'all. Oh, I understand. Oh, I don't get it. I need you to help me understand what's happening. And then, like you said, Roberto, what was you when we was in history class? Because now you want a lesson. So the question was, well, why are y'all so angry? Why are y'all so mad? Like, what are you so mad about? So, Dad, I'm gonna start with you. They want to know, why are Black men specifically so mad?
They want to know why Black. Well, it's like my best friend said it best. I've been Black all my life, and if you wear that skin, and I think when you start to think about the conditions, the things that you have to go through continuously, it just becomes irritating, and by people's not being able to move up without that, that block, you trap somebody in a box or a cage, they're going to eventually turn for worse. And then it's not just that. I just think it's a lot of things that's going on with the Black male as well, because I'm frustrated even with other Black men doing stuff to each other. You know what I mean? Like, I get frustrated with that. Like, I had a friend last week who just got shot in the head. He survived, but it was by another Black man trying to rob him. You know what I mean? So you got all those conditions, and then everybody trying to move up. Then you trying to find a way to make something happen so you could pass down for your family, for you to build something. You got these small business loans. I'm a business owner. The small business, they make it so impossible for you to get these grants and the stuff for you to, I can't, like you said, like Dennis said, I can't just go and be like, hey, my pop's gonna write me a check for $200,000 for me. I can start making my business. I gotta look and search for these things, and a lot of times there's no answers, and then you starting to see by the transparency of the world, you starting to really see stuff that you almost always thought to be true when you saw it. And then people are seeing it, and you starting to be like, man, we've been telling you this forever. You know what I mean? And it makes you even more mad. It's like, and when people are seeing this stuff, a lot of people still may be aware of it for a few minutes and be like, all hyped for you for a second. But after all of this goes and, smoke clears, you still got to live your life as a Black man in this country and in this world, hoping that maybe it get better or it might get worse, for you. So it's like, it's your livelihood. And I think that's why the Black male and just as a whole is just angry with all of this stuff.
Right. Keelan, why are you mad?
So many things. Wait, are we talking about a relation to Black people, or are we just talking about generally? Our Uncle Willie used to say, there's enough niggas at the bottom of the Pearl River to populate the whole state of Louisiana. And it's funny when people have been saying, say their names, as we should continue to do it. But the reality is, it's impossible. We can't say all their names because the history of the United States is littered with the bodies of Black people. And the thing that when the protests started turning violent, and everybody was like, oh, we like peaceful protests. We don't like the violence. And I'm known for being jovial and drama averse and all that stuff. And so people were looking at me to be like, yeah, peaceful protests. And I was like, nah, not this time. We've tried it. We've tried it since 1776. And if you really want to go back, we've tried it since the first slave ship came over here in 1619. We have tried to vote. We have tried to peacefully protest and assemble. We have tried to pray. We have tried to legislate. We have tried to adjudicate. And every other tool that this country affords its citizens to air grievances and to seek justice to no avail. The country responds to violence. So, to quote Game of Thrones, this time I chose violence. And it, I put my Cersei cap on. And not, and this wasn't, willy nilly. It has been over 400 years. And that alone makes you angry. But then not just the black bodies, but also the quality of life for Black people in America. Black people still make less money than their white counterparts, even though they are degreed the same and do the same jobs. If you live in the District of Columbia, you are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated for narcotics charges, even though by self-admission, Blacks and whites use narcotics at the same rates. It means that they are targeting Black people. Right. Somebody earlier, I think it was Dennis, who mentioned, purchasing a home and how difficult that is. And the problem with that is home ownership is one of the greatest ways to build assets over time and over generations, to maintain the middle class and move to the upper class and realize the American dream of class mobility as opposed to being stuck in poverty. And that is us in some cases deliberately, either through high mortgage rates or predatory lending and stuff like that. And I could go on and on and on and on and on. But we the kind of credence of the United States is the pursuit of life, liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And our lives are in danger, and in a lot of cases taken. Our liberty is in danger, and in a lot of cases taken. If we start looking at the statistics of Black people who are incarcerated for ridiculous and frivolous things, or for nonviolent crime, right? Like, I don't care how much you have on you, you don't deserve to be in jail for as long as they have Black people in jail. And marijuana should be legal anyway, but we won't go there today because everybody ready for that conversation. And our pursuit of happiness has been. And we are all furious as a result. Right. Let me make this last point. By God's grace, I've been privileged to have a better Black experience in America than a lot of people, right? Like, I mean, I'm by no means rich or anything like that, but I don't have some of the horror stories that some of our other brothers and sisters have. And even, with an experience like mine, I can still tell stories of discrimination and being held back and racism and stuff like that. So even in the best cases, we are still targets and we are still victimized.
Right. And, they said too, like, all of us are, we're all in the same generation. But, think about our kids and our cousins and stuff. Like, this the knuck if you buck generation. Like, they don't know how to protest peacefully. Like, they're not come out talking about some kumbaya whereas we made, but they really not. So, Roberto, you bad. Why you mad?
We call it down. That's why we not. They didn't call us between the 99 and the 2000s. I'm just I'm like, I'm mad for a lot of reasons. I'm mad because we aren't educated to the point that to the point we should be. I'm mad because we kill one another. That's, for me, that's one of those big things, because we could talk about police brutality. 4% of police brutality happen for Black people. It's for Black males. It's 4% of us. That's not a humongous number. Got it. When you look at what 4%, how much that is, what that actual real number is, then you start saying, okay, I can see the issue. The fact that 6% of this country's population, we're incarcerated. We're 35% of those people that are in incarceration. How do you do that? How do you do that and say in this country where we supposed to be all equal under the law, that I'm more apt to go to jail. I'm, 1 in 5 times more likely to go to jail than a white person.
Mm-hmm.
3 black people, black males are incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. So I got 6 boys. Which one of them going to jail? That's what I see here. You wrestle with that and you say,
Right.
wow, there are so many different angles for me to be upset and angry. And I'm not upset and I'm not angry. More or less, I'm disappointed. And again, for me, that's every time I go sit in class and I find out something that I didn't know at first, whether it's the legal system is supposed to do this, you have access to this, the you can do this, this person should know that, how we twist history around to make it fit X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
Every time you learn something, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. And I'm disappointed because indoctrination into this country is real. There are things that were taken out, and because it don't make everybody look good. It's not true. Abraham Lincoln said, "Hey, you know what? We can go ship some of these slave people, ship some of these slaves back to Africa. Liberia is a real country." He was for it. The story, some kind of way, tarnishes who he is. It doesn't tarnish who he is. It just tells more of the story about who he is.
Exactly.
To be more honest about who we are. We got to be more honest about where we're at, because no one's going to be perfect. No one's going to be right 100% of the time, and in trying to shape the narrative to make it seem, to put us in a different light, to put us in well, we can't do this because it is. There are a lot of things we have to fix within our own community, and we know that. There are a lot of things that we have to do to help one another, and we know that. I think what a lot of people try to make it seem is that we'll ignore black on black crime, but we're talking about police brutality. No, sir. Black people make up 14% of the United States population. There is no reason that you can even fathom that we go to jail. We're more 1 in 5 times more likely to be incarcerated, 1 in 3 times more to be shot by unarmed and be shot. How do you say that and understand the number of white males, white females compared to black males, black females? So how can you, if you understand the entire story, you shouldn't be upset and you shouldn't be mad. You should be disappointed, because at some point, when does the system work? Who is responsible for helping it work? Who is responsible for us being literate about how it's supposed to work and where we are failing it?
Right.
Because if you can answer those questions, then by all means, if you answer the question, you good with the answer, be upset. Be upset, be angry. But a lot of us don't know what we don't know, and we're upset at things. Like I said, I can see it from a police officer standpoint of, I'm trying to make it home to my wife and kids. I'm trying to make it home to my family. Got it. If you're scared, you might not want to do that job.
Hello. Sit down. Go home. Do something else.
Because, like I said, there are a lot of military vets. There are a lot of military individuals. There are people that they're not home. Period. They understood what signing their contract and raising their right hand meant. They understood that. And giving your life in protection of another is the ultimate sacrifice. Then how are you afraid of doing that? Understanding the job that you undertaking. How do you? I'm scared to give my life, but you want that paycheck. So for me, it is not. I'm mad or I'm upset. I'm disappointed because a lot of people throw a lot of things around, and it's all out of context. But when you place it in the context and you say, okay, this is the way things are supposed to be. Why are you like this? Well, I don't know. Do something to help make it better. Okay, one person can do 2 people. But when you constantly in a system that says if you white, you kind of all right. If you black,
Right.
you know, everything has a situation. There's no equability between certain things.
Mm-hmm.
The system starts to fail. And then now as the system is failing, you're left without an answer. This
Mm-hmm.
woman lost her husband. This kid lost their father because a police officer, 3 of them decided they wanted to sit on him for
Mm-hmm.
46 seconds. You explain to me why that's cool. You explain to
Mm-hmm.
me, well, even if he was resistant, police officers are not judges, juries, or executioners.
Right.
I don't see anybody talking about that part of the Constitution, your right to a fair trial. I don't see anybody
Mm-hmm.
talking about it. But you'll come back and you'll say things that's like, you're telling me about the Second Amendment, but you're forgetting about the other ones. Do you know how many amendments there are?
Right.
Amendments? You know, and again, civil liberties, civil rights, understand the difference. The one thing people really should, one of the things they should take away from the Constitution is, guess what the Constitution does not do? The Constitution does not govern you locally. That is for the federal government not to do X, Y, and Z. Period. That. It has nothing to do with you can't drive your car because the police arrested you the other day. It don't have nothing to do with that. So
Right.
when you're talking about the Constitution, when you're talking about history, when you're talking about businesses and capitalism, when you're talking about all these things, and you're just kind of like, well, this is what we were taught, and you kind of throw it out there to everyone, it's hard to say, hey, yeah, that's something I can be proud of. We can't keep touting American nationalism between World War One, World War Two, and the Revolutionary War, and start saying, yeah, we this great country, because we have issues with
Right.
education, understanding. So I'm not mad. I'm not angry. I'm disappointed because
Mm-hmm.
things that we should know as American citizens, we don't. And those things that we should be practicing and being a part of, we aren't. So that's me.
Right. What about you, Dennis?
A whole host of things. Two conversations that come to mind. I remember one day my mother and I was having a conversation, and she told me, she said, "You can't be smart. You have to be smarter because you're blacker." And I remember being a kid to have that conversation, not really understanding
Mm-hmm.
what she was saying. But as I grew up, she would kept repeating this statement to me to always let me know it's not enough for you to be smart. You have to be smarter because you're blacker. And I remember graduating from college, going in and interviewing for my first corporate job, and being offered. Listen to this now. The position was advertised at about 28K a year, and they offered me minimum wage for the job. Um, not
Oh,
to
what?
mention, yeah, not to mention, I had interviewed for the job about 4 times, had been declined. And I remember one of the managers, one of the black ladies in the office walked up to me and she said, they've never hired person, a black person for this position.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so after all those attempts, I finally got the job and I was able to negotiate myself into the pay I deserved. But the key thing is, going in corporate, there have been times where I knew I was making $20,000 less than my white counterparts.
Mm-hmm.
And I say I'm angry to that because you think back of all the things that we went through and we endured, and now we come to this next generation where we put our hope there, and we're hoping that everything we sacrificed and we endured is going to be used and beneficial for the next generation. But then we're now seeing the next generation falling through the cracks and experiencing
Mm-hmm.
the same things that we experienced at their age. I'm angry. I did a report one day, maybe 2 weeks ago. I did a report in class where we were talking about the numbers of the abortions that took place in New York from 2012 to 2016.
Mm-hmm.
136,426 black babies were aborted. 118,127 were born. Between 2012 and 2016, more Black babies were aborted than born in New York City. In Chicago, for periods of time between 2007 2008, they estimated that more Black children were shot and killed than soldiers died in the Iraq War. I'm angry. I'm angry because for some reason in our country, it's really easy for Black America to recognize when we feel as if something has been done wrong to us, and we mobilize quickly, and we move into action, but we don't follow through. We don't vote. We seem blinded by the fact that that it took a pandemic, coronavirus, for the deaths of Black men in Chicago to stop occurring, for Chicago actually have, and for places in California, they have ceasefires because people are dying of the coronavirus. We don't seem to be trying to pay any attention to the abortion rates that are taking place in New York. Black people constitute about, I think, maybe 13-14% of the American population. But why is it 13% of the population where Hispanics are now, I think, around 18% of the population? That is because Hispanic babies are being born. It's not necessarily because of illegal immigration. It's because the babies are being born. I'm angry because, again, that we have this disparity in this country where we tend to be blinded by the issues that are taking place in our own communities. We can point fingers and say, well, it is white America's fault. But then when you get into situations such as Ferguson, and you have 6-7% of the people who are Black, and in 2020 you now elect your first Black mayor, the Blacks have always had the numbers have been there, but they have not voted.
Right.
And so we've got to wake up in ourselves and understand that if anything is going to happen to change this country, then we've got to be the ones to initiate the change. We for too long we've sat back and we allow people to be in power, even to Democrats, and Republicans, to be empowered to say that they would argue for our issues, they would support our claims. Newsflash: Black men have always been killed by police. We were lynched. If history is brought into an account, and in Mississippi, lynching was not against the law. Even in in 2018, you could still lynch someone legally in Mississippi because it was not a law.
In the books. It's on the book.
The KKK in this country is still not labeled as a hate organization, even though the president labeled Antifa overnight. The KKK, who once lynched and hung Black people, is still not designated as a hate group. I'm angry. I'm angry to the fact that, that in 2020, we're still arguing about Confederate flags and Confederate monuments that are still lying in our country. And like I said, when you look at the numbers and you realize that once Wendy's and T-Mobile realized that Black Americans were serious this time, and we stood together in UNICEF, they now decide we're not going to fund. Even the NFL has come back and said, hey, we were wrong about the kneeling stance, and we should have taken advantage. We should have stepped back and listened. Why they want to listen now? Because they understand that Blacks are now boycotting businesses that are not listening. Do you realize that when Colin Kaepernick was removed from the NFL, that there was a movement by Black people saying that we're going to boycott the NFL, and that only lasted maybe a few months because we all returned to our TV shows in prime time and continued to support it. So therefore, there was no need for them to follow through and hold anything accountable. We watched a Black man be sacrificed because we didn't have his back. Because we would not stand for him, and then we got upset trying to say that other NFL players should have rose to the occasion. How come they didn't? Because they learned from his example. Do you realize that he has not been in the NFL playing football in years? Not because he's talented. Even Texas hired a guy to come in and pay them $70-something million. He couldn't even throw a damn ball. But we couldn't even get him hired because of the simple fact is because he took a knee. The president of the United States called him a son of a B. Um, you know, and so I say that to say I'm angry because in this country, until we recognize who we are and the political weight that we have and the political money that we stand for, nothing is going to change in this country. We got to understand that black people were marching in the 60s. We were marching in the 50s. You know, they burnt down buildings in the 80s, in the 90s, in the Chicago riots, in the Los Angeles riots. Buildings were burnt down, but then everything came back to normalcy and things just migrated back to being the same way again. If things are going to change now, then we've got to take action now, and we've got to understand where we are. You know, somebody put a question up about globalization, and something stood out to me about something, and I'll close with Syria. You know, in Syria, children are being decapitated. They're being killed, right? An artist, his name I think is Aziz Asmar. He's a Syrian artist who actually painted a mural of George Floyd that says, "I can't breathe." He painted the mural, but in the background, you have war-torn Syria, where their bombs have gone off and buildings have been brought to rubble, and people are trying to just simply survive. And Syria, of all places, are woke to the injustices that are happening to Black people in this country. People were marching in Europe and Australia and UK and Germany and Canada, and yet in our country, we had Americans trying to say, you know, what's the point in the marching? Because you know, Black lives really don't even matter to them. You know, and we get angry and we get upset. But you know, I want to play devil's advocate for a moment. You know, how can we get angry and upset when we don't vote? You know, we don't seem to be concerned with the abortion rates that are taking place in our major cities. We don't seem to support each other. You know, back in the people always want to say the brown paper bag test was created in Louisiana by white folks, but guess who used it? Black people used it. Black people used it to an extent to even determine who would get into historically Black colleges, who would get into churches and in fraternities and sororities. So we have to understand that, you know, that even though they may have written the history books, if we continue to follow the narrative that was written, things are not going to change in this country. You know, you said it best, Keisha, earlier when you said, you know, when you talked about what took place in, you know, California, Los Angeles, you know, with the burning and riots, and now here we are in 2020, and we're having the same scenario that is taking place. The same thing that happened then is now happening now. And I'll say, like Louis Farrakhan said, none of us are winners until we're all winning, which means that in this climate, yes, people are waking up, but the problem is Black people, you know, we've got to continue to push. This is not a time to go to sleep or to step back and pretend like everything has now been accomplished because they're giving you a few dollars. Because check this out. Do you realize that they approved the stimulus packet, and shortly after they approved the stimulus packet, they opened the states? They opened the states because guess why? They knew who was most infected by the coronavirus. Black people, right? They gave us money. And what do we do when we get money? We go shopping. So we took our $1,200 and we went out into the streets and we shopped, and our numbers skyrocketed. And then people say, how in the world did the numbers skyrocket in the Black communities? How are they, you know, how is it higher there? Well, guess what? The government gave us $1,200. They opened the states the next week over. We went shopping. We got infected. And now the government is saying, hey, we need to keep the states open. But guess what businesses are being affected? Businesses that employ people of color, the service industry, the hospitality industry. So you have to look at the numbers and realize that yes, you know, as long as it is affecting, you know, Tyrone, James, and Mike, let's open the states. You know, Florida is rushing to open the states. Florida Florida governor said in a statement, he said, do you know why the coronavirus is spreading in Florida? It's because of the Hispanic workers. He said the Hispanic workers. Do you understand that in the state of Georgia, the numbers are going through the roof, and guess who's being affected? Matter of fact, in Houston, in some places in Houston, 83% of the people who are being affected are blacks.
Exactly. Right here.
So you see the scenario. Mm-hmm. So I'm angry because, you know, we're so quick to run. We're so quick to mobilize, but we don't tend to ask questions, and we don't seem to follow things through. You know, when people receive this $1,200, some people put it in their savings account, they invested it. A lot of us went shopping.
And now we're infected.
And now we're infected. And now we're looking at the government saying, are we going to get another $1,200? Here's the deal. You're going to get another $1,200 because you know why? Because in the fall, they're expecting the numbers to skyrocket again. And guess who's going to be out there infected again?
Us.
So I'm upset because of these things here. You know, somewhere in the mission from Jim Crow to now, when you look at communities of color, you see poverty, you see projects, you see low-income housing. You know, we took it and we thought, hey, this is them giving us, a handout, but we never took it to initiative that received the hand up, meaning that years later from Jim Crow, our communities are still infected by the same lines that existed back in the 60s and 50s that were really designed to keep us at bay, and we're still experiencing it now. You know, it's a sad thing to know that there were, you know, more black business owners in the, I want to say maybe 50s and 60s that existed in 2020. So, I mean, we got to understand the numbers, and we got to pay attention to the signs, and we got to understand that when the government is pushing to reopen, we got to start researching and understanding who's dying. Because I guarantee you, if we were not the ones dying, then the states will not be reopening.
Right. It's like a calculated effort to kill us off. So I have one last question for y'all. I gotta have y'all back because this conversation too good. We ain't even tackle half of what I wanted to talk about. Y'all bringing it. So, what is one thing, if this is even possible, that we can do as Black Americans, because we sure can't defend on white folks to get it done, so that you all don't become endangered species? Matter of fact, you're already endangered species. What can we do to stop that, Derek?
Well, I think this, what the Bible says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. I think that we live in it's a double-edged sword. We live in an age where you could pick up information and you can listen to you point your ear to the right direction if you want to, because it's all channel. Right now, people can be listening to what we're saying, and all of us are keeping it 100% real. You can choose. Now they can't, everything's transparency. They can't force, it's not a cultivation analysis where the TV station direct you to what they want you to see, the radio station. Now you could choose what channel you want to listen to. And what you do with that information and that knowledge is going to change your direction and help you go to where you are. I have a philosophy called domination over the dead society. And I feel like the society we live in is the body. If you can learn how to control the flesh, if you can learn how to control your actions, your jealousy, everything that your flesh yearns to want, that when you step outside, that control factor, just by you being able to control yourself and understand what the world is today, anybody can be killed. Anybody is injustice everywhere. That kind of stuff. Don't let that make you walk around like a victim, but take that and learn how to empower yourself so that you can be, what you want. They can't stop. One thing that Black people have to realize is we're still going. And one thing that people have to realize, they can't stop this train. That's how I say, they can't stop the train from going. You have to just learn how to grab your fate in your own hand. I mean, now the television shows, They can't give us little snippets like they did a Rodney King beating. Like all I saw was little snippets in the 90s. Now you have access to see everything and be more transparent and grab all the information and knowledge. And what you do with it can change your destiny. You know,
right.
Where you point your ear, you know, the direction you point your ear. So if you want to learn about investing, if you want to learn about this, you want to learn how to get that. There's free money out there. A lot of people like when finding grants and stuff. There's free stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there that you may not know about, but you can now. You can find out. You know what I mean? They can't really hide all that stuff from you no more. So that's one thing and just learning how to. I live by the Bible, and Jesus said, you know, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. If you can learn how to do those two things, you'll be good. You know. So I even though I have anger and this and that, I don't let that paralyze that past and different things paralyze my future. I let it sharpen me and make me aware, but I learn how to walk and to still empower and stay positive even in the midst of this wicked world. So I mean that's just my
right. Roberto, what can we do to stop, slow, if that's even possible, you are from becoming endangered?
Sitting here thinking about our band professor, band director, Mr. Wren. Teach a pig to march. It's a waste of time and it annoys the pig. Thinking about that, and I'm like, oh, you know what? The problem ain't the problem. The problem is our attitude about the problem. Like at the end of the day, we got to get our fire behind. You can't start something because it don't matter how you start. It matters how you finish.
Yeah.
We have to be able to finish everything we start and not sidetrack with, you know, the $1,200 stimulus package. We made it. No, we didn't. We have to find ways to finish things that we start because that's what we're missing. That's where we failed. That's where we dropped the ball at. You can't depend on a figurehead. Look now. It's 2020. Who would you say is the quote unquote go-to leader of the Black people? It isn't one. You know, you go back to the 90s and or the 80s and you say it's Jesse Jackson. And you go back to the 60s and 50s, you say Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X. We don't have that. And I'm not saying we have to find it. Every community has a leader. Every Black community here in this country has a leader. And we need to start getting behind those leaders and not just showing up. Like you said, don't just show up when it's time to march. It don't take that long. If it take you all day to go vote, wait all day to go vote. Don't just go vote and be like, okay, yeah, we going. Take your kids. You know, they have to see us. They have to see us win. They have to see us succeed. Until we start putting those seeds, like I said, I applaud my mom. She popped up on here a couple of times. I applaud my mom. I watched my mom as a single parent finish nursing school as an LPN, finish degree as an RN. What I can say is it was not my mom alone that did that. She made sure that we had positive male role models in our life. She understood that, hey, it may not be no man here. Go talk to your grandfather. Go talk to your grandfather. Go talk to our pastor. Call it.
Right.
Hey, certain people that you don't want to disappoint. It's totally different when it's a lot of them. There's a lot of people you don't want to disappoint. Your attitude kind of change about things. So I feel we have to stop sitting here saying, hey, well, we want better policemen. We want police brutality to end. Guess what? If you try to say you want to be a policeman, you might want to start, hey, you know what? I think you'll be a great policeman. Why? Because these things I've instilled in you, and if you're doing it here and this neighborhood knows about it, in 18, 19 years, you can turn back around and be patrolling this neighborhood. Guess who they not think in here out to get him? The person that grew up right beside him. Guess who already had a dialogue with him? The person that grew up right beside him. So I feel like in a lot of things, we have to learn how to end what we start. But starting it is easy. Apparently, you know, we can start marching and you ain't supposed to even be outside. You can go outside and go shop as soon as they give you a little money. We need to figure out a way to finish just as strong as we started, so we can start getting rid of a lot of these racial situations and things that cause us to feel in danger. So that's where I feel like we have to do better.
That's true. Dennis?
I feel that we gotta restore two fronts. One front is gonna be our families and our communities. You know, from 2009 to 2018, when you look at the statistics in terms of single parent homes compared to blacks and whites, it's been consistent across the board for 9 years. 25% in terms of the U.S. population of white families have been single parent homes. In terms of blacks, it is 65% across the board, with the exception of 2009. It was 67% then, but 65% across the board. You know, there was a study one time that scientists looked at children who were born, who were raised in single parent homes, and they found that it not only affected their behavior, but also the structure of their brains, their minds, and how their thought process. And those children became more they were either more agitated or angry or disassociated. And so when you look at the numbers, you understand that, you know, not having both parents in the home, you know, you have children who are more likely to be involved in drugs. They're more likely to fall to deviant behaviors such as promiscuous sex, having babies out of multiple babies at a time, teenage pregnancies, you know, like I said before, drug abuse. So you see so many things that are taking place in the black home and not having, you know, that strong structure in the household. And when I say in terms of the communities, you know, I was in a meeting one time of so-called professional black men, and they were discussing the issues that are facing the generation, and they highlighted the absence of the male fathers in the home. And somebody said in the meeting, they said, "Hey, why don't we come together and serve as mentors?" When that conversation was dropped, a large majority of them said, "Hey, we'll write checks, but we don't mentor." Yeah. And so, but that's the thing that's happening in a lot of our communities. You know, for those of us who are able to get out, we're getting out, we're moving, and we're leaving. If you look in white communities, many times they go to college, they graduate, they come home, they become caretakers for the next generation, their families, for their parents. Those family generations tend to stand and bond and grow together. In terms of us, once we make it, we tend to leave home. So it's not even that crab in the bucket mentality. Once the crab is out of the bucket, they're gone, and the other crabs are really left in the bucket, really to fend for their own. You know, my mother was a single parent, could not read or write, but she owned property. You know, she believed, you know, in paying cash for cars, so she would save money up, you know, to pay cash versus renting. And so growing up, you know, her mentality was you're going to college and you're going to graduate. So even as a child, I'm talking about 7 years of age, you know, her mentality to me was you're going to college. So when you hear something, you know, from 7 to 18, you tend to believe it. I believe it because, like I said, of my mother, because, you know, my father, you know, he was also definitely involved in my life. He wasn't in the home, he was involved. She also went out and made sure that we were surrounded by strong mentors who could motivate us and keep us steered in the right direction. People who, you know, I used to call them teletypes that always tell what we did if we were late for school. But she had Miss Elizabeth who would sit on the porch and she would watch to make sure that we got on the bus at the right time. Mr. Jesse would sit on the porch and make sure that we didn't go to the park, that we went home. You know, Mr. Sanford would, you know, she had to work late at night. He would watch the house to make sure that nobody came into the house. But we had a family, a network of people who worked together to make sure that we stayed the course. And that's what is happening now in our communities. We have so many of our young, and this is the kicker. One thing that we don't tend to realize is that the school system loves our Black boys, they love our Black girls, they love them for their, for their physical ability. As long as they play sports, they're valuable. Okay. But the problem is, what happens if they don't get scholarships and they come out of the school and now they're left with nothing else to do? And so nothing is left really to prepare them for life after high school. And so we got to be more involved in this to understand, hey, if you want our kids to play sports, then you got to have tutoring programs. You got to be concerned about their education. You got to make sure that they're not only excelling on the field, but they need to be excelling in the classroom. If we set the parameters for the things, there would be changes taking place in this country. But again, we're not doing so. And I think that's the problem we're having in this country now. It's a sad day when, one of my cousins, the example, love my cousin to death, but my cousin has about 7 kids. He has 7 kids, 5 different, baby mothers. And and the problem of the matter is, when you have children who are separated from so many different lines, you may have some of them that will stay the course and they should make it, they should do well, but so many of them will fall through the cracks because again, they didn't have that example of the father, of a strong father in the home. I love the fact that my I used to always tell my mother, I can't stand my father, and she would always say, your father's a good man. Her philosophy was, you're not going to break down a Black man. So she always put that instilled in us to even to this day. I don't argue, with Black men. I don't argue with people in general. I believe it's not my place to, but that came from being instilled in me by my mother. So again, I think that if we're going to make some changes in this country to make it stick, then we got to go back to the families and we got to start fixing our families. That's what helped us survive. Here's the kicker: during slavery, we were still married. We found a way to remain family. Even when they tried to separate us, we found ways to identify our kids. We branded. We did everything we could to stay connected as family. Even if they changed our name, we found our kids. So I think the thing is, for us in this generation here, we've got to repair the Black home. We got to prepare our communities, our churches, our ministries. Back in the day, when the mother wasn't able to take care of the bills in the house, you had the church. And the church would step in and take care of the bills, but the church also would step in with mentors, with strong deacons and pastors who served as mentors to the young men. If they didn't have a father in the home, you had to father them in the church, and they would father you. And so I think that we've got to get back to fathering our children. There's this movement now that we say, oh, well, they're woke, they understand. Now, I'll close here. I remember relocating to Dallas, and I was in a store, and there was a Hispanic and a white kid in the store with a Black kid, and the white kid used the N-word, and I almost choked. I'm from Georgia. We don't do that. But the Black kid laughed. He thought it was a joke. He thought there was nothing wrong with saying the N-word.
Right.
And we say, oh, they're woke. But we got to understand that Black history is not adequate history in this country. In our history books, I never read about William Edward Bogart Du Bois. I never read about William Tubman Washington. I never read about those people. We didn't read about slavery. They had Harriet Tubman name mentioned. They had sharecroppers picking cotton, but they didn't talk about slavery. So we have to understand that history is not being taught in this country. We're saying, oh, our children are woke. They understand racism. When they understand racism, when somebody tells them no, that's when they start understanding. And typically that's not until they're either out of high school or maybe 17, 16 years of age. But what would happen is if we would push the schools to teach racism in the school system, and we would educate them on Black history. It's a sad day in this country when you can take a picture of Harriet Tubman and ask your kids, who is she? And they won't even know who she is because they've never seen her in a history book. So if they're not learning in the classroom, guess who should be teaching them? We should be teaching them. Okay? So if there are fathers in the home, guess who should be raising to the occasion to be the father, to be the mentor for them? The Black men who are there. Okay. So, we have to understand that, for so long we waited for white America, the government, to fix our issue. Newsflash, for the 20s to now, it ain't changed, it ain't fixed. If it's going to be fixed, then we've got to take the initiative. We've got to start fixing it, which means that we got to start with our homes. We got to start in our communities. We got to start training our children young to understand their value, their worth, not just pushing them on football fields, not just pushing them on basketball courts, but holding the book up and saying, read a book. One of my friends joked the other day that she wrote in cursive. She gave it to her daughter, and her daughter is in a private school, and her daughter was like, "What is this?" She didn't understand what cursive was because they're no longer teaching it, right? But the daughter thought it was another language, right? But that goes to show you, that if we're not willing to take that initiative to teach our kids, we can't expect the school system to teach it if we're not teaching them. So if we're not teaching the importance of the Black family and the Black home and how to build and nurture and be there for one another, then guess what? Don't get upset when white America isn't teaching our history. Because guess what? The history they're teaching does not say the KKK is a hate group. Okay? The history they're teaching does not say white supremacy is wrong. Even the president of the United States got on TV and said, "Oh, white supremacists had a rally in the Carolinas, resulted in someone dying," and the president said, "Oh, they're good people." Okay, so we have to understand that if our narrative is not being spoken, then we got to take the initiative. We got to teach it.
He a dummy anyway. I'm sorry, Keelan.
I concur. So I can think of three things we need to do. One, and I don't want to belabor the very good points that were made, so I'll just mention education. It is the silver bullet. That there are a lot of people who can name all upwards of 1,700 NFL players in the league, but can't name 3 of the 535 people in Congress between the House of Representatives and the Senate. That's got to change. And that comes from reprioritizing. I am the first to talk about all of the barriers to education that exist in the Black community that are not the fault of Black people, and there are many. But we also can't turn a blind eye to the things that we can do and the responsibility that we can take as individuals to move the needle with regard to education. So that's one. The second thing is organization. I think Roberto mentioned the Black leader, and I agree with you, brother. We don't necessarily need one king or one queen in the Black community to lead the whole group. In a lot of ways, that's a recipe for disaster because people are fallible, and they can certainly fall. But we've got to find a way, among the communities and across the whole group of Black people in the country, to organize in some way. I don't know if I don't know how many people remember the Occupy movement that happened. If you don't, don't be ashamed because it fizzled out because people, they were like, we want change, and everybody was like, what do you want? And they were like,
They didn't even know.
Right. But what's interesting though is in the Black community, we have a little bit of that too. Certainly we can articulate "stop killing us," right? That one's clear. But after that, this isn't just a battle for Black life. It's also a battle for Black livelihood and quality of life. And there's some very specific things that need to be changed. And we all, as a people, need to be educated on those talking points. What those things are, how they need to change, how we're affecting, people, or how those things are affecting people. And so, and the best way to do that is to organize. There are enough African American founded and led organizations around the country that they could come together and create a web of support and a web of advocacy for the Black community. And they're all self-interested on some level. Not to demonize them, but they have budgets and bills and things like that. So I understand it, but it's counterproductive to the success of the people as a whole. And that leads to the third thing, and that is The African American community is a wide net. And you know, to stop the Black man from being an endangered species, we all have to come together as Black people so that we can leverage all of our talents and all of our abilities. And sometimes that means connecting with people that we've historically not been comfortable with, or people who we've historically looked over. You know, I will start with women. You know, Black women. I can't remember the young lady's name who was in jail for so long for killing the person who was selling her as a sex slave. This was very recently. Nobody said her name.
Something like that.
Huh?
Was that the one Centoya?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I shouldn't say no one, but there were not nearly as many people saying her name.
Yep.
You know, when we talk about income disparity, you know, Black men make less than white men. Black women make less than all of us. And so, you know, we've got to move the needle on that. The LGBTQIA plus community, you know, the way that the Black community at large has treated that group is abhorrent. There have been at least six trans women that have been killed since George Floyd died. At least one was killed by police. No one is saying their names. I was at a rally, and for the record, I am a queer person of color. I was at a rally in front of the White House last weekend, and the Alphas were down there and they were doing their thing, and I was proud of those brothers, you know, leading the charge, and we marched up to the gate of the White House, and folks were chanting and stuff like that. And I remember thinking for a hot second, I was like, if it was me that had died, very few of the people out here would have given a damn, because I'm not straight. Got to change that in the Black community, and so, or you know, and the list goes on. There's so many subcultures within Black, and you know, one of the things that I think we've got to stop doing is caring only for the people who look the way that we want Black to look. For the people that we think represent Blackness, when Blackness, as I said, is a wide net. So yeah, I think if we tackle those three things, we can see the momentum that we've started here continue and create lasting change.
Right. I absolutely love y'all. Y'all are like the bomb. Y'all gotta come back, cause like. Y'all gotta come back, because I'm telling you, it's so many things just out of like that we could just unpackage from what you just said there. And what I'm saying is, and I'm so glad, and this is why I brought straight shooters on here. We looking at the white people over here when we need to start within our own selves and within our own communities. You right, Dennis, with the family. Keelan and I are first cousins. Our mothers are sisters. My mom.
That's why we look so good.
Right. And I can remember our grandmother didn't know how to read. She learned to read by reading the Bible. And she instilled education in her kids. His mom's educated. My uncles are educated. My mom went to school, but she was more of, you know, she wanted to be domesticated, I'll say like that. She took care of my grandmother. She took care of us. But it starts in our community. I learned about how to take care of money. I'm learning now at 43 years old, honey, you should have been had a savings. But my auntie, his mom, learned that, and she passed that on to us. She talks to me constantly about how we should be saving and how we should be doing those things. I really love that y'all came on here. I gotta have y'all back on here again. Well, y'all come back. Y'all back for real.
Yeah.
Like, they might not be ready for y'all conversations, but these are the kind of conversations that we need to be having. These are the kind of conversations where we not telling this what the white man did. No, let me see. Look, I saw you on the news standing in line for them Jordans, but when it was time to vote, you talking about I ain't going out there because my vote ain't gonna count. My stuff ain't gonna count. These are the type of men we need at the table advocating for us, so that we can talk to other people intelligently, number one, Because everybody drop facts, statistics, and everything, but we come to the table, we talking crazy, and we don't know what we talking about. And that is part of the problem. So I thank you so much for joining me on tonight. We will definitely have y'all back soon. Do not share this broadcast, ladies and gentlemen. Please share this with all your friends. Tomorrow night, I am back with another explosive panel, Moms of Sons. It's going to be myself and 4 or 5 of my friends. We're all moms of brown boys. I have a hot-headed little brown boy, and I'm telling you, I'm very careful when he leaves his house because he could be having a bad day and a cop could too. And who's going to win in that battle? So we're going to talk very candidly about how that feels that whenever our sons leave the house, they can't buy Skittles, they can't wear hoodies, they can't play with toy guns, they can't listen to loud music, they can't even be in their own house eating ice cream or sleeping on the sofa. So we want to talk tomorrow about that. So join us again tomorrow night, 7 p.m. right here, and we're going to start that conversation. Thank you, gentlemen, again, and I will see y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.